Okay, so in this example, you're going to see me do this one in both model space using the annotation option, and I'll do it also in paper space just to kind of show you the difference between them. So I'm going to create this basic shape, and then after I create that, then I'll save one or save an additional copy of this one so I can show you the difference between both paper space versus model space. Okay, so one of the first things you notice is that the units were not in our standard decimal units or format. We're going to switch over to the architectural style. And now I'll start creating a line. I'll make sure that I have ortho turned on. I'm going up 22 feet. Zoom out a little bit. And this is one of those times where I'm going to break the command by hitting escape. I'll go to zoom, extents, and now I'm able to scroll out and go a little bit bigger. Now let's come back to the line command and continue from this endpoint over a distance of 19 feet. Let's go up a distance of 2 feet. This direction, 12 feet. I'm going down 28 feet. 12 feet this direction. Let's go up 12 feet. Over this direction, 7 feet. And then I can come down, and I think it's 8 feet, but what I can do is I can just touch this and track down, and it will lock at that 8 feet. I'll do a left click here, and then I'll go to close. And you can see this jumped up because I actually escaped out of the command, and when I came back in it, it did that. Just going to select this line, grab this grip, and place it on that endpoint. Okay, so this is the basic outline of my shape. Let's go ahead and select it and join it together. I'm going to choose offset for the inside of this because I know the thickness here is about 12 inches. And it doesn't really specify them on the drawing. It tells me the outside, but it doesn't tell me the wall thickness. So I'll go to offset, give it a distance, which is 12, or 1 foot. Select this line, I'll go to the outside. Next, I'll select this line and come to the inside. Now, if this looks a little bit too big for you, you can use another smaller wall thickness, somewhere like 8 inches or even 6 inches. But for this example, I'll just leave it at 12, but you're more than welcome to switch it to whatever size you like. Okay, for the roof lines, one of the rules that anytime you're creating these roof pitches, it's really ideal to keep the lines at 45 degrees. So I'm going to switch over to my polar tracking to the 45, 90, 135. Then I'm going to make sure that I turn this icon on. So when I turn this on, ortho should automatically go off. Let's create a line from this endpoint. And I'm going to use the tracking just to come up and place it here. Create this line going from this direction. And once again, I have the polar tracking going. Let's draw a line from this endpoint going out this direction at 45 degrees. And then I'll draw a line coming from this endpoint going this direction 45 degrees. Start connecting some of these by drawing a line from this intersection right up to where it intersects with this line, and then I'm going to cross with my 45 degree line going this direction. Okay, I'm going to clean this up a little bit, fill it. My radius is set to 0. Choose multiple. And I'm just going to fillet these two lines together. Fillet this line together with this one. And then I'll close my peak up on this side. Let's jump over to the other side by creating a line from this endpoint going at the 45 degree. And I'm just going to continue to keep creating these lines going at 45 degrees. Create another line going this direction. create one coming here. Now let me undo that line. It didn't look like it snapped on the 45 degree. Then I will create this line going here. Okay, so let's go ahead and draw a line going straight down from here to this direction. And wherever it intersects at, so I'll leave it. Let's clean this up a little bit. So I'm going to fill it. And then I'll put a fillet between here and here. These two lines. And I know that I want this line to stop where this one is. I'm just going to fillet it here to here. And then I'll bring it back with filleting between these two lines. Let's continue drawing a 45 degree line going this direction. One going that direction. And then I'll connect these two end points on this one. Let's continue our fillet between these 2 points. And it does look like I made a mistake here. Let's go ahead and create that line again. So I'm going to draw a line from that end point going at 45 degrees here. And now to fix all of this, I'll use fillet multiple. And I know that this line goes to here. And then I'll fillet this one to here. And that moves down to like so. So let's go ahead and move that one to this location. And now when I fillet this one, everything should be nice and in line. Create one more line going right across here. Okay. Now that's everything that is done with all of my roof lines. And at this point you'll decide if you want to use paper space, model space, or using the annotation option. In this case, I'm going to start off by using the annotation option. Okay. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to save this drawing as drawing number 1. So I'm just going to hit the save icon, or you can type in the word save. And since this is my first save, it's going to look for a location. I'm going to call this one Annotation. And save it here. Next, I'll do a save as. And in this one, I'm going to call it paper space. And then I'll finally do one more save as. And this is going to be model space. Look, I lost my L on model space. Okay, so now I have 3 drawings set up with the exact same plan of this one. Let's go ahead and open them all, just so I have all 3 of them listed up here at the top. So I have model space open, which is the last one, and you can see it on this icon. I'm going to select the one that says paper space, and I'm going to hold down the control button, and I'm going to select the annotation one, and I'll hit the word open. And if you give it a little bit, now you can see I have the model space one, the annotation, and the paper space. So starting with the model space tab, the first thing that you want to do is that you want to insert in your title block. So all of your drafting is done, just like we normally do. I'll use Classic, Insert. I'll bring in my B-size title block. Make sure nothing is checked. Go to OK. And there's my title block. Next thing you want to do is select your title block. Right-click and choose Properties. Once your Properties window is open, then you can select and start playing with the scales. I'm going to be adjusting them to use these type of scales. So the numbers that I'm going to be messing with is going to be in this column here. Okay, so while I have this selected, in my scale X, scale Y, and scale Z, I'll start off with 12. You can see that number is a little bit smaller. Let's go a little bit bigger than that. So let's try 32. Next, I'll try 48 and see if that's more to my liking. And it looks like 48 will give me enough room to dimension and do all the things I need to do. So let's go ahead and escape. And remember that our scale, well, before I hit escape, let's go back and select our title block. And since we know the scale now of this one, let's call this one House. Inside of the scale, let's go ahead and make this 1/4 equals space and equals 1 foot dash 0 inches. And I'll zoom into that so you can see exactly what I typed. Okay, let's go ahead and move this up. So I'm going to select them and just going to move this into position like so. Okay, let's go ahead and put these lines on the inside and go ahead and put them on the correct layer. In this case, we're just going to use the hidden layer. Okay, so everything's on the correct layer right now. Let's adjust our line type scale with LTS. Then we're going to type in 48, which is our scale factor. In this case, we don't have any center lines or center marks to put on this one. We're ready for the next step, which is dimensioning. Underneath the annotation option, I'm going to change this to dim. And you're going to set up your dimension style. The thing that we're going to use in this one, we're going to go to Modify. Underneath the lines, I'm going to start in this column first. Symbols and arrows. We're going to change our arrowheads to the architectural tick. And it should change them on both of them. We don't have any centers to worry about, so you can leave this option either on or off. Underneath the Fit tab, since we're using model space, I'm going to set this to 48. In this one, we have our dimensions aligned with our text and things of that nature. So go back to the Text tab and tell them that you want your dimensions aligned with the dimensions. So now you can see all of them are aligned. And then one other option is that we want it to be above. So underneath the vertical, choose the word above. And all of your dimensions will be above that line. Let's go back to the primary units, or go to the primary units. Let's go ahead and choose architectural. Our precision is 1/16, although all of ours are whole numbers. And I'm trying to make sure that there's everything else. So we have them set to horizontal. We don't have anything to round off on. Our scale factor is okay. And do we want to suppress the feet and inches at the end of it? In this case, I want to see those inches at the end of it. So uncheck this box where it says 0 inches. Okay. And close. Okay, so now we should be able to start dimensioning. Start with a linear dimension. I'm going to choose this endpoint to this endpoint. Come and place it here. Choose continue. that endpoint, and finally this endpoint. This one we'll come back and fix. It's easy enough just to select the dimension, then select the grip that has the text on it, and then just rotate it down along this side, and it's going to eventually snap with a line underneath it. Continuing with my linear dimension, I'll select here and here. Choose the continue option. Start a linear. Come down at the bottom and place my linear dimension. Let's go ahead and use continue. And then I'll place a couple of more linear dimensions on. So linear, I'll hit the enter button just to let me know that I want to dimension that entire line on this one. Go back to the linear, the enter button, and then do it on this one. And of course, you know, you can go back in and clean these dimensions up a little bit if you don't like seeing this line or this extension line on it. Go ahead and turn the extension lines off, or you can select this grip and put it on top of the other square grip. And that's one other way you can do it. Okay, and I'll show you how to do this last dimension, and this will be the same for each of the examples that you're going to use. So, linear, select this endpoint to that endpoint, come and place it on this endpoint, and then remember the ED command. So ED, just like to edit text, select your dimension. I usually like to hit the end button on my keyboard, or you can use the arrow keys to go all the way to the end. Enter, TYP, and that stands for typical. Go ahead and close it. And now your dimensions and everything are all done for if we're using this in model space. Going to the annotation one, I'll start off by doing the exact same thing I did before, is that I'll bring in my title block. So I'm going to use the classic insert. If you do know your scale, you can change your scale right here. So in our case, we do know what our scale is going to be. So let's browse and select our B size, open. And it's going to be the exact same one as we did on the model space one. So we can go ahead and cheat a little bit. You can put a check in the uniform scale box, and what that does is just have you only change one box. So if I made 32, you can see all of them are 32. But I'll leave it at 48. Okay. And my title block should appear. Now normally I would go and adjust the line type scales and things of that nature. And let me go ahead and change these on the correct layer first. So I'm going to select these two lines on the inside and go ahead and put them on the hidden layer. Okay. So like I was saying, normally that we would go and we would type in the LTS command and then we'd adjust this to the scale factor. But if you're using the annotation option, you don't have to do that. You select the fly up and then you tell it that you want to use the 4 equals a foot. And once I select that one, it sets it here. And I'll type in RE, and this stands for regenerate. And you're going to see that line type scale is already adjusted for us. Let's go ahead and move this to the inside. Okay. So once again, we don't have any center lines and center marks and things of that nature, so we don't have to worry about that step. And one thing I wanted to show you on model space is that if I go back to model space and I wanted to type that text at the bottom, and I know it's going to run into here, but I just wanted to show you an example of text. So I'll choose text, and I'll pick my start point here. And now it's asking me, how big do I want this text height to be? Now remember that in model space you have to multiply it times whatever scale factor your drawing is. So in this case, I'll type in CAL, enter, and I want my text height to be 1/8 of an inch, so I'm typing in 0.125 times, and our scale factor in this case is 48. Rotation angle is at 0. So now I'm able to start typing. I can start with all ridge, it should probably say ridges, roof lines, and that's about all I need to type just to kind of give you the idea of what I'm trying to create. So you can see that I had to do the multiplication on this one. Switching to the annotation option, I need to first justify or tell it what text that I'm going to use. So I'm just going to use the style option. Remember, you can get to the text style by selecting this drop down and selecting this first icon with the A. Or if you're on the annotation tab, you can select this drop down here. Or if you can remember the first two letters of style, that'll get you there as well. And all I'm doing is switching this one to double clicking it just to let it know that I want this to be the current style. Okay, and I'll show you the benefit of using that. So if I'm using the annotation option and I want to use single line text, let's jump back. It's asking me to put my start point like we did before, and I'll select here. And you can see now that the text is asking me for a paper height. All I have to do is tell it that I want it to be 0.125, no multiplication or anything. And once I hit enter and the rotation angle is the same, now I can start typing in the all ridges and you can see from as I'm typing this, I didn't have to use the multiplication because I told it to use annotation, and it's doing the multiplication for me. Okay, in our text style, so that was the text style option. In our dimension style, and you can usually just type in D, enter. I'm going to double click on annotation to make it annotative, modify, and everything else is going to work almost the same except the exception of one box. So in our text one, I believe we adjusted this to 1/8 of an inch. So 1 divided by 8. We adjusted this to be aligned with our dimensions. And we told it that our vertical height we wanted to be above. Symbols and arrows, we changed this to architectural tick. None. Went to our primary units. And then we adjusted this to architectural. And then we unchecked our inches. So we don't want to suppress that. Okay. And make sure once again that we're using the annotative one, and I'm just checking that here in my current dimension style. Go ahead and go to close. Let's adjust our dimensions to the right layer. And now I can start dimensioning this just like I did before when I was in model space. Remember that I did not have to adjust the fit tab in this one. So if I go back to annotative, modify, I purposely skipped over the fit tab because it doesn't even have that option for me to select it. I'm using annotative, so I don't have to worry about that as well. It's going to do all the scaling of my dimensions for me. So I can keep going with this, and I can add, continue from this one. And then I can go around this one just like how I did the last one. Okay? So you can take a look back at the model space if you want to know how to dimension it. Everything is exactly the same. And you can fill out your title block and things of that nature the exact same way that we did before. Okay? The last option that I'm going to do is going to be the paper space option. So if you're going to use paper space, and these are the 3 different ways we learn to do title blocks, is that I'm going to jump out to the Layout tab. I'll use my insert in this case, so I'm just going to use Classic Insert. Browse to my B size. And now I'm in paper space. Everything should be 1:1. So I don't have to worry about adjusting all of these, or any of these actually. So once I select OK, it's going to bring my title block in. Remember that we can adjust this to go around our title block. I'll go to the Layout tab, choose Page Setup, Modify, DWG to PDF, ANSI Full Bleed, and I'm using a B size in this case. So it's a B size 17 by 11. I'm just going to set this up to do the extents, center it here. 1:1 should be what your paper size should be adjusted to. Select OK, and then close. Okay, so remember now this is a viewport, so I'm going to select it and I'll put it on the viewport layer. And we can make this how big or how small we want this to be. So I'm just going to drag this and make it go to that endpoint, to this endpoint. I'm going to activate my viewport by double clicking on the inside of it. I'll go ahead and zoom the extents. Now I can adjust the scale. I can select this drop down here. And in our case, we know what we want it to be, so I can select it here. And this is going to automatically adjust to that. And since we have our title block in, let's go ahead and move this to the correct layers. So if I go to Hidden, you can see that my line types have already been adjusted. I'm going to double click on the outside to get out of the viewport. Now once I jump back into the model space, you're going to see that everything looks normal because the line type scales here are not adjusted. And you don't have to worry about adjusting them because Paperspace is going to automatically do that for you on the outside. If you're going to type in any text, and I'll use single line text, it's just like the annotation scale, so whatever text height you want to do, you just have to make sure that you're not on the inside of the viewport. So in this case, if I want to type in 0.125 for my text height, rotation angle is at 0. Now I'm able to start typing in all ridges, roof lines. Okay, so you don't have to worry about trying to figure out the scale or multiplication to make your text come to the right size. Underneath the dimension option here, you can choose to use either one of these that you want. It doesn't really matter when you're dealing within Paperspace. So if you want to use the annotative one, you can use that one. You can use the paper size. Because the annotative one is only going to take, and I'll show you that because I'm outside in Paperspace, it's going to dimension it as 1:1. If I was inside a model space, then I will have to adjust it there. So I got it set to annotative. Let me set that to the current one. And let's go and modify just like we did the others. So underneath our symbols and arrows, we changed our first one to architectural tick, and automatically it does the second one. 0 on our center marks. Text height 0.125 or 1/8. Want this to be above. Align it. Underneath the fit, remember we're using annotative, we don't have to worry about this. Primary units, architectural, and then we do not want to suppress that 0, and I go to OK, and then close. Change this from set current to dimensions. And now when I start dimensioning, it's going to bring them in at 1:1. Now, I've seen this before where some people will go in their model space and then they will put their dimensions. And you can see that it's saying that it's going to be set up at 1:1. If I adjust this, let's do the dimension on this one just so it doesn't overlap and we can get a good comparison. Okay, so we put this at the correct one. When I jump back to the Layout tab, you can see that these two do match. The huge benefit of doing, in my opinion, doing them in the Layout tab or doing them out here is that if I have multiple viewports, and let's go ahead and create another viewport. you can see that that dimension is on the inside of that one. If I create a dimension out here, and I'm using the annotative scale, you can see that this one comes in at the right size out here on paper space, whereas this one is going to be locked on the inside in model space at whatever scale you got that set to. So if I adjust the scale on this one, I'm going to have to go into model space and also adjust the scale on side of my dimensions that are on the inside. So that's one of the reasons I always like to do my dimensioning in paper space or on the layout tab. So make sure that you're not on the inside of your viewport. Okay, so those are going to be your major differences between using each one of these different styles when you're trying to create something. So some people like to do things in strictly model space and everything is manual, and there's nothing wrong with doing it this way. It's an effective way, and it's been working for a long time. Paper space is really good as well, as long as you keep track of what viewport you're in. And using the annotation scale is something that's kind of fairly new, but it does take a lot of the multiplication out that you would do when you're using the regular model space dimensioning. Okay, so I hope I kind of explained to you the 3 different ways of how to create one, or create title blocks in these 3 different ones. And over the entire course, that's kind of what I was trying to show you and explain to you on showing you each one of those. As you can see, the model space one took the longest because I had to get you used to the multiplication part of it. But the annotation and paper space option is a lot quicker and a lot easier, and it takes a lot of the multiplication out. So as long as you keep up with the scale factor, and that's going to be important in no matter which one you use. Okay, so for this example, I just want you to go ahead and turn in one for model space, one for paper space, and one for annotation scale, just so that you know how to do it and you have seen it done. Okay, so I think that's about all I need to show you on this stuff. If you have any comments, please leave some comments for me and be more than happy to answer your questions. I want to thank you for taking the time to stick with me, and I know this is kind of a longer video, and thank you for watching this one.